in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking, with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder, coming at you every week, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Well, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Is that right, Dr. Thunder? Am I right there?
That's right. That's right.
All right. Let's get one thing out of the way. Very, very important thing. Go ahead and click that like button, click that share button, click the subscribe button and the notification button if you have not already. Okay, today we're going to be continuing a conversation. Part 3 on this conversation here about stress-free productivity. Okay, and again, to get us started, first of all, maybe I should drop a lo-fi beat in the back. Okay. So that we can ease our way into things here. All right. Get things started. The basic premise is this. You need to be appropriately engaged with the tasks in your life by taking them out of your head and putting them into a system. The system is a calendar. The system is you actually making an appointment or getting it into some kind of getting it out of your head, basically, right? Isn't that right, Dr. Thunder? That's the main thing. Get it out of your head, get it out of your heart, get it out of your psyche, get it out of your dreams, and put it down somewhere else where things are going to start happening. And obviously, conversely, the reason you're having stress, because it's a stress-free productivity. So the stressful productivity is where you have it in your head. But when you take it out of your head, presumably, it is less stressful. Hence, you need to be appropriately engaged, again, which is the word of Mr. David Allen, by using systems such as calendars and whatnot. And we're going to continue reviewing a video, a TED Talk of his today. Anyways, Dr. Thunder, how's your week been going? Has it been a stress-free week, or it's been a more stressful one? Is the system working, or does the system need more tweaking? What's going on out there?
Yeah, the week has been pretty. It's been pretty hectic. We moved all of this stuff from a building that the School of Music has. I'm talking about the institution I work at. School of Music has been occupying for a long time. A long time, and we vacated that building to a new state-of-the-art facility across the street. So it wasn't a far move. I mean, literally across the street, not like catty corner or something, but like literally across the street. So it wasn't tough from that perspective, but just going through stuff, throwing stuff away. What stuff am I going to keep? What stuff am I going to put here and there? Space, there's a size difference, the space difference. How are we going to best utilize that space? So all that kind of stuff, which, can be stressful. I always tell folks, I wouldn't wish moving on my worst enemy. I really do not like moving. It's really sucks because it takes a long time get yourself like set up and just ready to go. And okay, you kind of have the lay of the land, and then to be kind of flipping that around, just ugh.
Well, you said state of the art, modern for facility. Well, two things there: the space in terms of just the sheer volume of it. You have more space over there, and then also the aesthetics. You prefer the vibe. When you say modern, I'm assuming okay, it's got to be more glass and more light coming in or whatever.
Yeah,
And
it's better in every way. I mean, the building that we were
okay.
in before didn't even have climate control, so we had these
Oh,
old, air conditioner units hanging out of the window. And I was on the fourth floor, so in particular, what that means is, it was an old radiator system. So these old, ancient radiators are how you're getting heat, and they don't really all the way go off even in the hot months. So even in February, where I live in the Midwest, where it's pretty cold, I had to have the AC on full blast, 24/7, and let alone on the beginning of the school year, for instance, September, you know, late August, early September, it's so really really hot, and so um, yeah, so all of that is a thing of the past. I mean, besides the fact that anytime, I I have a studio in my office, right? I'm set up to record and to do all kind of stuff. But so you basically you turn off the AC and sweat a lot to to record some, and then you got to turn the AC back on because you're gonna spontaneously combust. You don't. So all of that stuff is a thing of the past. So it's very cool, and the new performance space and everything. It's really I mean I'll be honest. I was pretty dark on the idea of moving. Yeah. But now that I'm actually moved out, I mean, it's all boxes and stuff. But now that I'm all moved out, it's like, okay, I can handle this.
How about with your residence? When was the last time you moved? Uh,
Yeah. So when my wife and I got married, we moved into, let's see here. So I guess it was for a week or something. She was living in the new place or whatever before we got married, and then I moved out of where I was staying. I was living in my grandmother's basement. That's not just a bad that's not just a bad story. That's actually true. It's not just made up story. It's not for effect. It's actually true. Um, and then we moved from that place to the one that we're in now. We only lived in the first place for what, like a year and a half or something,
mm,
and that was a little bit forced. The way that worked is we found out that the house was being listed, and we were told that they were not going to list the house, and that if they were going to list the house, we were just renting. But if they were going to list the house, they were going to talk to us about it, and they went and listed the house anyway without telling us. And then, and we were because we got past a year, and then we went to a month-to-month thing with them. So we were like, we're out. So, and then they were hassling us about the deposit and stuff. Of course, we got the deposit, so we were okay. But it was just like some goofy stuff. So anyhow, we got out of there into the new place. We're still in the same place we've been. So
gotcha.
oh goodness, 12 years, something like that in this house.
Ah, nice. Lucky you haven't had to move recently.
Look, I'm
Um,
telling you though, but you know what that means, because my wife
just a
is always like tweaking and she wants stuff to change and all like that. So the fact that I've been in this house for 12 years or whatever it's been, some 11 or 12 years, that means the move is happening. It's going to be happening pretty soon.
okay. Well, hopefully you guys are
I'm
not just accumulating stuff, are you?
yeah. That's the problem. That's the inherent problem. Is you stay, you know, especially once you've stayed in a certain place beyond a certain amount of time, then you just have a lot of stuff. I mean, you have stuff that you haven't seen for like 10 years,
Yeah.
and you obviously you don't need that stuff, right? But then the problem is like you go through that stuff, and okay, so in my situation now, in my office, where I teach, my office, right? So the first office I was in that office for let's see here, it had to be about 10 years. Might be more than that, maybe 11 years, something like that. So I was in that office for a while, but it wasn't nearly as big as the office that I just moved my stuff out of. And so then I guess it was about 2015 or 2016, somewhere in there, that I moved to the office that I'm in now. I'm sorry, that I just moved my stuff out of. And even in that short period of time, just the amount of stuff that you accumulate, just like even stuff like opening the drawers in your desk and just all of the incredible amount of stuff that's in there. It's like, dude, I've been looking for this. I haven't seen this for 5 years. Obviously, it didn't matter. It wasn't important for us. You'd have been okay. But so anyhow, so yes, that is sort of happening, which is going to make it quite the event when we do move.
Yeah. Don't. My advice is don't. If you can outsource it as much as you can, do so. Don't try to alpha your way through the move by yourself. And there are some good companies out there that actually, for a decent price, relatively, Now, the way I got into this was when I moved from Southern California to Northern California. Okay, the company helped me move. Okay, that's the company that I sell crap, right? And they had these professionals that came in. So, and their thing was, you're not even allowed to pack. You can pack some stuff, right? But they're like, we got this, okay? We know what we're doing. So they came in and literally put stuff in the boxes for us, and then wrapped up the boxes, blah, 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 that kind of a thing, and put it. And they were professional and very efficient. And then when I saw that, the next couple of times I moved, right, I started kind of utilizing their service. Even though I have another crazy story about me moving just about every piece of furniture in our house by myself, which was it's crazy, Dr. Thunder, right? Like it's one of those kind of insane types. Like it was stupid, but I literally moved stuff by myself. Like I mean by myself.
Look. I'll tell you, I've been in, I've lived in the town that I live in now since 2004, and it wasn't until 2009, 2010, I think, that I did not literally move every year. Every single year I moved. Every single year. And it was just me. It was just me moving all the stuff.
Gotcha. So you know the struggle.
Yeah, so I know I totally know the struggle. And actually the last time we moved, it was a little bit half-heartedly. I kind of looked at some of these services like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I know that it's going to take something like that this next move. But the property values are so ridiculous right now. Like these companies are coming in. You don't have to do anything to your house. Your house is half falling apart. You got a leak. You got a cracked foundation, and squirrels coming in, big crack in the basement and stuff like that. And they're like, "Hey, we'll take it." And matter of fact, we'll pay you more than you could have got for it. Before it's quite It's crazy.
Mhm.
And I got right in purchasing our house. I got right in at the perfect time. We did a lease to buy arrangement with the owner,
Mm.
and at that point in time, that worked. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find that now, because because of the way that the market is. But the way the market was when we were looking, people couldn't sell their house, and the values of the houses were going down precipitously. So what is it, 2000? I don't know. I guess it was 2009 or something like that, or 2010. Somewhere in that range. That's when we bought the house. When we moved into the house was worth 20 or 25,000 more than what we ended up buying it for, because once we were at the end of our term with the owner, and so I felt bad about that. So I cut a deal, an outside deal with them for cash. To try to, I didn't quite get halfway, for what the difference was, but I felt like I needed to do something. But so now the property value it's about twice, or it might be more than twice what it was that we bought the house for. So you have that, plus the fact that random people are contacting me left and right, putting stuff in my mailbox and everything else. We'll buy your house right now for cash. You don't have to do anything, and it's more than the house is worth that they're offering.
Wow,
so it's pretty, it's pretty tempting. It's pretty tempting, and I know my wife is very tempted by that. I know she's like, we can get out of here. The problem is where you're going to move to, because you're going to have the same issue trying to buy something.
Yeah, that it kind of brings to mind Rentgate. That has been. What is Rentgate, Dr. Thunder?
Rentgate. I'm not sure. What is Rentgate?
Okay. Somebody renting a room. Somebody. You didn't see any videos recently about someone who's renting a room and people talking smack?
Oh, yeah. Rentgate. Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a. Since we're there, that's an interesting fact, actually. The renting, whether you rent or own something, I don't see what the big deal is. Like I rent where I own properties, but I rent where I live. That's because I'm always moving, and also because I don't want to buy property in the Bay Area. Like why? So, which is where I currently am now. When I do eventually get to Oregon, right, I'll probably buy something there, because it just seems like a nice place in the coast of Oregon, decently priced to kind of own something in. But the idea that you can't rent, or the idea that, for example, you can't downsize, okay? Because there are many things that were wrong with the whole Rentgate situation. And again, that's people saying that Kevin Samuels was renting a room from Karen, and that this means that he ain't shit, right? But the fact that, for example, let's say he just moved to Atlanta and then he downsized, right? And he says, you know what? I want to be in this neighborhood because of the connections and because of certain things like that, and I want to have Buckhead in my my zip code, but I'm a single dude, I don't know his divorce situation or whom was siphoning money out of his, but I know that's going on most likely in terms of him making some kind of payments to somebody, child support, whatever it may be. And then I want to downsize. I want to be in just a single room over here. Like, why is that such a bad thing? It seems to me it's kind of an interesting point there. Like, that sounds like something I would totally do if I could stand being in the house with other people. Okay, that's a separate question. Okay.
Look, I told you I started this whole I guess this is the pre-show, I guess. I started this out by saying that I was living with my grandmother in her basement. Look, it was cheap. It was cheap.
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay any utilities. I was helping her out because, you know, she was elderly. I could help her do things that she needed. Made her feel comfortable to have me in the house, you know, in case something happened. You know, so it was in a, you know, the area that it was in. It wasn't the best area, but you know, it was a good area in the, you know, fenced in yard, so I could bring my dog. I didn't have to get rid of my dog, you know. So hey, I mean, it was a good thing. I could save money, you know. Stock. I mean, KS. I mean, he had a nice car and he had nice clothes and he had all the, you know, watches and perfumes and candles and all that stuff that is not cheap. That stuff is not cheap. But this cat was not peacocking, or he wasn't like, "Hey, I got money." You know, he wasn't that cat. So this cat was stockpiling bread. This cat, I mean, this cat was putting. I mean, this cat was saving a lot of money. He was putting a lot of money away. I mean, because I mean, you know, nobody knows for sure, but he just didn't seem like the let me just flash a bunch of cash for no reason. I mean, everything that he was doing, he had a particular reason. The image stuff, yes, the stuff that he was wearing was expensive, but it was for a purpose. It wasn't like freaking spinning rims on a jalopy, you know. It wasn't that. So
all right.
Yes, I did use the word jalopy. Yes, I did use it.
We are going to start transitioning from the pre-show, ladies and gentlemen, into the main show. The main event. Everything we've been talking about does touch upon productivity. Okay, we talk about your office and how now you don't have to. I hate that whole hot studio crap, by the way. Like when you have a studio set up, but you know the little vent in the corner of the room is just like, oh my god! So now you got to turn it off, and it's all hot and sounds great, but you know it's like
yeah, you've done some ghetto studio too, I see.
Oh yeah, 100%. So
low budget studio.
Indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about stress-free productivity. You need bandwidth in your head, so take the stuff out of your head. So we're going to start listening to David Allen tell us more about this. Okay, let's go.
Be innovative. All that stuff I'm being tasked to do, to be a leader, all that stuff, I just need room. And if you don't have psychological space, you could have 2 hours of free time and waste it. If you do have psychic bandwidth, 2 minutes in an elevator, you can have a cool idea and have a fabulous relationship with somebody that moves the needle.
Good point. You could have a lot of time, but if you know you're not organized, if these things are not in a system, right? If that task you have to do are not in the system, you could be. And let me stop using the you could. It happens to all of us. So I have found myself in that situation, right? Because there's always an area of your life, or you know, there's no 100% organized, right? So in those parts of your life where you're still having things in your head, where you haven't put them in a calendar, you haven't put it in the system, you could just be paralyzed as to, well, what do I do now? Right? You're like,
oh yeah,
it's like I got 2 hours, but what the heck? I can't do anything. I gotta sit down and think, like scatter. Everything's all scattered. So that's a fair point, Mr. Allen. All right.
So this is the real key issue here, is the lack of the bandwidth to be able to engage with that appropriately. Even worse than that is that our creative energy is then not available to be creative. Our creative energy is being used to try to patch up and handle and try to remember and remind and try to do all that stuff that most people are trying to manage all the details and stuff of their life in their psyche instead of in a system. Just trying to keep up with the mess. And by the way, life is messy if you haven't noticed. Actually, mess is cool. Actually, the most productive times I am is when I have the freedom to make a creative mess. You too. I need room to be crazy, to make some mistakes, to brainstorm, to be chaotic, go a little off the edge. That is going to be your most productive time, is when you have that kind of freedom to do that. However, folks, if you're already in a mess, you ain't got room to make one. If your kitchen's a mess, you don't have time or the energy to have a creative dinner for your friends. If your desk and your office are a mess, you don't have room and space to be, crazy about some new project and spread out and have brainstorm with ideas. If your email is backed up on you with 1,000 unprocessed emails and you got 3,000 other things going on in your head, you have no space to take advantage of just.
Spent a couple hours the other day doing the whole inbox thing. Now, we all have several email addresses. Some are more important than others, I presume, right? And then some need to be more organized than others, right? But there's this one particular email that I like to keep very organized. There's a whole bunch of folders in there, right? Going back to like 2014, where, just like stacks and stacks of things archived, where everything has a place. And then I started stacking up things in the inbox recently, where I looked at the inbox and it was like 300, and we're on page 1 of 1 to 50 of 6 pages. And that is stressful, right? So I'm like, you know what? I got some stuff to do right now, but I think that I should take 1 hour out and just start putting things into the folders that they belong, deleting things and all that other kind of stuff. And I don't know why that is useful, but it seems to be the case that, and maybe it's a hang up of mine. Maybe I shouldn't care. Now, here's a question for you, Dr. Thunder. Some people, is that my problem? In other words, it's like the 300 emails are not biting me. Why don't I just ignore it? Is it me? Okay. Or do I actually need to clear up those emails? At a certain point, it's a moot point, right? But I'm kind of asking you to just kind of play around there, riff on that a little bit if you can.
Sure.
Yeah. So is it me? Is it my problem, or should I just ignore the emails and just press on? Do I have to really be as organized as I think I need to be?
Yeah, I would argue that the level of organization that each person requires may be different, right? So I don't think we have to pretend that a surgeon and a trash collector need to necessarily have the same level of organization to be able to, be efficient and pull off their job well. And I think we want the surgeon to be more organized because of this sort of critical nature of what it is that they're doing. We want them to have the amount of bandwidth necessary because the potential that they could, just with the twitch of the hand, end someone's life. And so now, and this is no shade to the trash collector. I think as the trash collector becomes more, if he gets ambitious, decides, hey, I want to climb the ladder, climb the trash pile, then yeah, that was a cheap shot. I shouldn't have done it. If the trash collector decides, hey, maybe I don't want to be the person putting the trash in the truck. Maybe I want to become the person driving the truck. Maybe I don't want to be the person driving the truck. Maybe I want to be the person that organizes the routes that all of the trucks are driving and the personnel. Now you see, as you get higher up, the more need for organization there is. As just the person that's just collecting the trash, just, you don't have to be that organized. You jump off the truck when it stops, you grab the trash, you throw it in there. That's the level of organization that you require. Well, maybe you need enough organization to determine what clothes you're going to wear, what time you need to get up, what food you need to eat. Okay. So just base level stuff. But obviously, as you climb, you it's required that you have more organizational skills.
Okay, good. So in there, I see two factors that you brought out. One is that the more, shall we say, consequential, right? Because you talk about the surgeon versus the trash collector, right? The more consequential your actions, the more precision you need, right? You can't just be like, I sometimes I'm off, sometimes. No, you need to kind of hone things in, and honing things in generally means being more organized. And then also you mentioned that the higher up, so number one is the more consequential, and then number two is the higher up you are, because the higher up you are, the more subordinate other things are to you, what you're doing, right? And these subordinate things need to be organized. You need to kind of keep things within a particular kind of frame in order to keep all these things that are underneath. Good points there. Ladies and gentlemen, again, click that like button, click the share button if you enjoy this kinds of topics, okay? And click the subscribe button and the notification.
Discretionary time that may show up in terms of being creative, in terms of your energy. The results of that, if you're trying to use your psyche to manage that mess and you never get out of it, is you get the results of two things that are the critical elements of self and organizational productivity. You'll lose perspective. That is, you lose the ability to put your focus where you need it on exactly the thing you need it, at the horizon you need it. And or you may be experiencing the results of what happens when you lose control. That is, I now don't have stability, and I don't have the freedom in my head to be able to put the appropriate attention and execute on it when I do. So those are the two key elements. Folks, you can't manage time. You don't mismanage 5 minutes and come up with 6. The only time that you think you need time management is when one or both of these two dynamics is suboptimal. Either things need to be more under control or more appropriately focused. If you map those two things together, what do you get? If you, on the bottom left here, where you got no control and no focus, ever been there? That's your basic victim experience. Driven by latest and loudest. For the most part, most of us are thrown there by our own overcommitments and creativity. We're just trying to come up for air.
This is something that I tend to struggle with. The whole, how much am I controlling my activity? What I mean by that is, how proactive am I? How much can I predict what I'm going to do next week versus catching all the balls that are being thrown at me, right? I don't know how you have to. Now, I assume, right, and this may be wrong, but I assume that you probably have a more of a handle on that. Okay, you got a syllabus, you got a schedule, you got these gigs that you're gonna do, you have a calendar, so you just go ahead and you start bam, knocking it away. You're not constantly like, oh my God, here's this opportunity, let me chase it down and all that kind of stuff. Am I right there, or let me ask?
Yeah. So
in what ways do you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
You feel like you're not controlling your time here, where you're like, hey, I was supposed to be doing X, but then 17,000 emails came about Y. Now I'm stuck in the Y jungle, that kind of a thing.
Right.
Now, what ways does that come up in your life, if it does?
Yeah, so it definitely does. And there's sort of a volatile nature of what it is that I do. Taking gigs and stuff. Can you not hear me?
You're good.
Okay. But there's a volatile nature, so things can change on a dime, and I need to have enough flexibility and flex to be able to accommodate new opportunities. Let me give you an example of this. So, I have a lot of stuff booked on the calendar, and stuff is continually coming in. So, let's say over the last couple weeks, much of my summer has become populated with performances and other sort of opportunities and all kinds of stuff. Now, I needed to have enough flexibility and openness in my schedule to be able to accommodate that, to be able to say yes to those opportunities. And sometimes the case has been that I have had to put something else off based on the level of a particular opportunity. So say for instance, if Wynton Marsalis called me and said, hey, we're doing a 2-week tour in China, and we need a tenor saxophone. Can you do it? Now, I'll tell you right now, and of course I would, and I know my wife would feel the same way. She would say the same thing. I would say yes first, and then I would figure it out. Okay. Now, so there is that kind of stuff that happens, but I try to plan things, and I am more of an intuitive than I am a planner per se, but I've learned how to be a planner to facilitate enough organizational, skill, enough bandwidth, as it were, so that I can say yes when some of these kinds of opportunities arise. And whenever I take on, say a new job, like I recently started a new, I'm a musical director at a church, and I just, started at a new church in December. Part of our conversations initially was, okay, you do understand that I'm a musician. I'm a professional musician. That's the first thing that I do. Then I'm a professor, and then of course, the social commentator thing. So if there's a hierarchy, that's the hierarchy. So what that means is that performance, music, sort of, potentially career changing kinds of opportunities, visibility changing opportunities that happen as a performer, that's going to take priority over everything else. So I'm saying yes to you. I want to hang out. I'm sorry. I want to hang out. I'd like to, be the MD at your church. That's great. But folks have to understand that, what that may mean at times is that I might not be available. Now, the way that I handle that is I always make sure that it's as if I was still there, even if I'm not there. Right. So you cultivate relationships with folks, and you have a structure, you have it organized in such a way that you can still get the information to people, and there's a certain expected flow and pattern that everybody that you've been using is used to that same flow and pattern. So if you're not there, they just fall into that same flow or pattern. Now, maybe that wouldn't stay that way forever, but all you needed to stay potentially is maybe, a Sunday or 2 Sundays in a row or something, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, okay, and share the stream, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Kazoran Empire in the building. Share the stream, Kazoran Empire. I don't know if you have, but I'll check your community tab. I'll be checking on your community tab to see if you didn't. You'll be getting taxed if you did not. But yes, Dr. Thunder, 100%. Having a system such that you don't need to be there is 100% key. Okay, I'm in Africa right now, taking, I got 2 phones with me, taking phone calls from people all over everywhere. And some people don't need to know that I'm not in the Bay Area. Talked to a client recently about some project he's having and him needing somebody to go 2 eyeballs to go down there. Sometimes you got to go to a construction site, right? Now I have a system for that when I'm not there, right? Because now, granted, the clients may think, oh, it actually takes an engineer to be there and look at it, but it's like, no, a picture does, or I could send somebody to go there, right? And all they have to do is like, okay, go here, take this video, look here, here, and here. So I have a system for that. I have people that I work with, both in Southern California, in the 3 states that I operate, California, Washington, and Oregon. I have people that I can call and be like, hey, can you go over there? Obviously, I pay them, right? And, there's an ongoing business relationship between myself and these people, so that I can be here in Africa taking care of some other stuff while these other things are going down. Yes, but the reason why I brought this up, while he's talking about the fact that, hey, you want to be in a position where you're controlling your time more so than in a position where you're just completely reacting, is because in the sales world, you're always tempted. And when I say sales world, in the world of drumming up more business, when you're in the business world, right? You're always tempted to look at the shiny thing over there, right? like, oh my God, I just got a call from Google, right? You're like, you drop everything. this could be it, Dr. Thunder. We're moving on up. So there's always that kind of a temptation. People telling you, oh, there's this great prospect over here, this stuff up. You got to learn how to be like, okay, let me shut it all down and let me find the one thing that I should do that is, and the more higher up you go, Dr. Thunder, to your earlier points about needing to be more organized, the higher up you go, the more you're going to need to have this skill of saying no to a whole bunch of stuff. Mr. Dave,
yeah.
Exactly. Everybody wants your time and your attention. And sometimes it's not, I feel silly saying this, but it's not fair sometimes. In other words, sometimes it's not a question of, a win-win situation. Some things are going to lose. Some projects may lose out, or some people may just have to suck it up and not get your attention or your time. But that's what it is to be in the position that you're in. You can't be doing everything everybody wants you to do, because you're not going to get more than 24 hours in a day. And if you're not focusing on that one thing that only you can do, then it's 100%, it's not going to work out. One last word on that. I tell some people, right? Like, let's say I'm in certain kinds of partnerships with people who do, let's say, sales for me, and it's just a commission thing. You get a percentage of the business that you bring in. And sometimes they want me to do certain kinds of things, right, to help reel in the business. And I'm like, I could do it, okay, but so could just about any other person in the world, right? But this thing that I'm doing right now, that I'm saying, hey, it's gonna take my time, you can't do it. As a matter of fact, so point is, let's just make it simple. Let's just say it's engineering versus making a bunch of phone calls, or either putting things in a calendar or a spreadsheet or whatever, doing some kind of research. Anybody can research, right? And by anybody, you know what I mean, right? Anybody can research. But if I drop this engineering task, who's gonna pick it up? Like, it's not like I can just throw you there. It's like, okay, you take care of this engineering thing, and then I'll go do the research. It's like, no, only I can do the engineering. So you need to know that about whatever it is you're doing, that thing that is like, hey, if I drop this thing, no one else can pick it up. So I can't be taking on, I'm going to have to tell you no, sir. I'm like, hey, I would love to help you, but I can't do it. I got to do this, what I'm doing, no one else can do. And it's not because I'm trying to brag or nothing, but we're all interested in this business going well, in this deal going well. If I drop this thing, no one else can pick it up. So I appreciate the fact that you need help with your side of things, but anybody can do that stuff. So let's find some other way to do that, because I cannot be distracted over here. All right.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's totally true. One thing I think about when I was in college, undergrad in particular, just about every sort of guest artist that would come through, several of them, they offered me a gig. So like we'd have these guest artists that come in and play with the top big band, and I played in the top big band, and I was a primary soloist in the band. And so they'd hear me play, and they'd be like, oh, I got to get this guy, and so they'd offer me a gig. But the thing is that the offer of the gig meant that I would have to relocate. I'd have to drop out of school. I'd have to X, Y, and Z, right? And so this is it's a common issue for, folks that are talented. It's a common issue. It's like people are going to see your talent and they're going to be like, oh man, I want to deal with this guy right here. This is the guy I've been waiting for. And you have to be able to say no. You have to say, you have to have enough confidence in your talent, in your journey, in the path that you're on, in the goals that you've set for yourself, to be able to say, if I do that, that's going to really get me off of what my plan is. And you have to also understand that though it may not be exactly the same opportunity, similar opportunities and better ones are will happen, because you're becoming better, you're doing all the stuff that you're supposed to be doing to gain more experience. So theoretically, you're going to have those opportunities, but you're not always going to have the opportunity to be on a full ride scholarship, or to, everybody's not going to always want to, give you money to go to school. When you get 35, and I'm sure, if you're talented enough, I'm sure you could still maybe finagle something, but it's much easier when you're young to get that scholarship money. So you gotta look at that. So that's something. And then I like to also talk to my students about the difference between what I call important and urgent. Important and urgent. So we all know about this tyranny of the urgent, right? So the tyranny of the urgent, the way that it works is it demands what it demands, and you must bend the knee to its demands. It's this spiraling out of control thing where you're running around putting fires out, and you don't have an opportunity to think about anything or to be strategic or anything like that. It's the house is on fire right now. Get out of the house right now. It's urgent. It's not, you don't, well, you know what? I see the flames around me. Let me consider. That's not the way that it works, right? The tyranny of the urgent. So the thing is that when we adequately plan, organize so that we can spend the necessary amount of time and energy towards those things which are important, then those things that have been adequately addressed will not become urgent, right? This is important because once something becomes urgent, you must, by definition, drop other things which are important, which causes them to become urgent. Right. So then you're in this this relentless struggle. And so and this is sort of easier to talk about than it is to actually execute. Right. But at all costs, you have to try to eliminate that tyranny of the urgent component. Now, the fact is that the volatile nature of life, you're going to end up in a situation where something will be urgent, and you must drop things. But if you have spent enough time developing a system, organizing, to be able to spend copious, amounts of time addressing those things which are important, you're going to be in a far better situation. You'll have less stuff that gets pushed into the urgent pile. So Yeah.
Yeah, the ultimate stress is when you have things that are, shall we say, independently important, right? It's important. Yeah, your family is important. Whatever it is, that they're important, and then they become urgent, right? So it's both important and urgent. That's what you don't. You want to avoid being in those situations. Hence, you want to, as you say, plan and organize for all the important things such that they never get into that urgent category, right? Because then you're going to be screwed. I actually got an email today, for example, okay, which was an urgent email, but to me, I was like, this is not important. I actually practiced. So let me congratulate myself. Okay, I actually practiced one of these principles today, where I got an email. Some other people were copied in it, and it's this it is a data center. I'm gonna It's all these NDA projects. So I'm not gonna say the name of the company, right? It's a data center somewhere. There's some kind of anchor, which anchor is just some kind of fastening. There's some kind of way of holding on to concrete, the way steel attaches to concrete. Okay, so you have these anchors that are having some issues with reinforcement bars and blah blah blah. What are we gonna do? And then I looked at it. I'm like, look at all these other people copied in the email. I'm like, in the past, or shall I say, in a less disciplined mode, it'll be, oh, let me jump in and start answering the question, right? Like, but I thought about, I was like, all these people here, they can address this question. This is not okay. This is not, oh, let me be super creative to sound like a total douchebag. This is not an Ike level type question here. This is not Ike level engineering. Somebody else anybody can answer this, right? Any of these other engineers here on this thing can pick it up. And if they refuse to pick it up, if I look an hour later and no one has answered, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm not going to take time away from me trying to solve these difficult problems to answer this urgent thing. Yes, it's happening. They need an answer right now, but look, it's not that important to me. So I actually did that today.
Yeah, I have the same. Yeah, I have the same sort of I have the same sort of strategy to addressing a lot of issues. So it's like the who was it? I think it's Pat Riley. I think it was Pat Riley. They ask him, what's the secret, to your success, winning championships and like this. And I think he said the secret was really good players. They were looking for him to say some, some philosophy
thing and upside down, whatever.
Yeah, right. But no, it's not that at all. It's acquiring the right people. And the thing is that if you acquire the right kind of people, the capable, intelligent, problem solver, proactive, actually conscientious, actually care about, what it is that they do, see their job as their mission, have wanted to do that kind of job for their whole life, love and have a passion for it. So we have these kind of people doing jobs, then and everything is sort of copied to this pool of people. It's less necessary for you to jump in the middle of that. You can sit back and you can say, okay, let me see who comes up with the with the idea that's going to be the solution to this thing. And every once in a while you'll have to either be a tiebreaker, or you'll have to establish a particular parameter, because maybe you have some creative thinkers and they're trying to think outside of the thing. Okay, no big deal, right? But you certainly do not need to be the person that's in there thinking of all the ideas. Oh my goodness, I'm glad I don't have to think of all the ideas. Praise the Lord. It's much better not to have to do that.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, these are perennial principles. Okay, these are things that all through your life, it's going to constantly be going on as you move higher up in your career or whatever, and any kind of endeavor. Could be a household that you're managing. You're going to be at that position whereby you're going to need to be able to cut out. You need to cut out 99% of the noise. Okay, presumably by putting things into a system, and also by just simply saying that's not my problem. Okay, someone else can deal with it. Hence, you need to be working, and ideally you need to be. It's like a double-edged sword. People want to get up to the top of the pyramid where they want to do this one thing where presumably they're the best at, right? But it's not so easy to, because you're always tempted to start doing all these other crap that other people could do as well. So you're like, oh, I wish I could just be doing that one thing. But then you find out that it's not so easy to ignore all the other 10,000 things. So being less of a control freak is an aspect here that is important. And this goes back also to the bandwidth thing that is the crux of David Allen's position here. Remove things out of your head so that you have the bandwidth to think. Remove things out of your path of I have to engage so that you actually have the bandwidth to do the things that are most important to you. But let us continue here with his talk.
The only time that you think you need time management is when one or both of these two dynamics is suboptimal. Either things need to be more under control or more appropriately focused. If you map those two things together, what do you get? If you, on the bottom left here, where you got no control and no focus, ever been there? That's your basic victim experience. You know, driven by latest and loudest. For the most part, most of us are thrown there by our own overcommitments and creativity. We're just trying to come up for air. Now, if that part of you shows up that has high focus and perspective, but no control, now you're the mad scientist. Now you're the desperate artiste. Now you're the crazy maker with all kinds of crazy ideas and no constraints of what you're doing. You're nothing very well organized. Middle of the morning, you decide to go buy the new iPhone, but your IT department won't support it. On the other hand, you can get down in the weeds and say, oh, wait, I need to get 10,000 things organized. I need to get all this cleaned up. And now you get into micromanagement. If you don't have appropriate focus, you can get down in those weeds and hung up in them like crazy. And you'll spend a lot of time, doing a lot of trying to get organized about things that may not be that important. Right? In the morning, you were a crazy maker, said get a new iPhone. In the afternoon, you spend 2 hours of what could be a strategic afternoon trying to set up the right ringtones. Here's what's true about all three of those, folks. You ain't ready for what's coming towards you. You will be suboptimal in terms of your ability to handle the surprises, and they're coming. Good, bad, or indifferent, they're coming. Trust me.
Yeah, that was the point I was
available
making.
for those things. They come to you. Now, everybody says,
You want to make a comment?
Yeah, that was the point I was making. So surprises are going to come, and you have to. You need to be set up in such a way that you can accommodate those.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an illustration I sometimes use, and it's different, but the concept is the same. The idea is the same. Like, the whole, if everything is urgent and you don't have anything set up, then it's like all it takes is like one thing to happen and it pushes you into like a nervous breakdown, or just pushes you over the edge, as it were. So, and this idea is it's the idea of, perfecting something, so say, a student has to play a particular piece of music and it's super challenging, and they have it so that they can like barely play it if the if it's the climate controlled sort of setting, and there's no additional ambient sounds, there's no distractions, there's no everything happens exactly perfectly, then okay, they can play it. But that's not the way that things work, right? So you knowing it to the extent that you can barely do it is not useful. Is not useful in a performance and actually a presentation. You need to know it, as they say, forwards and backwards. You need to be able to play it at different tempos, faster than the goal tempo, slower than the goal tempo. You need maybe to be able to play it in different keys, all kinds of stuff, so that you are developing a flexibility, a fluidity with whatever the concept is, whatever the piece of music is, that you know it so well that when you make a mistake, and since we're talking about human beings here, you will make a mistake. It might not be an earth-shattering, monumentous, totally obvious mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. When you make that mistake, do you have enough flexibility to be able to continue on and still play well? Or is that one little, what is it? The pea in the under the mattress, as it were. Is that one thing going to make it so that everything else is, you can't recover? It's like the difference between something being flexible and active and something being crystallized. Right? So when it's crystallized, you can't do anything other than this one thing, and that one thing has all of these specific parameters for, and if any of those parameters are not met, any of those conditions are not met, then it falls apart, it crashes, it's crystallized, it breaks apart. It's what's the
fragile?
Glass? Well, fragile, but what's the thing from the Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson movie?
Mr.
Glass.
Mr. Glass. What is the word or the concept you're looking for from that movie? What was the movie called, anyways?
What is it? Unbreakable.
Unbreakable, or
yeah. And so that the opposite of that was this guy who's fragile and he's evil and everything. Sam Jackson. But anything happened at all, and it just breaks his bones into 1,000 pieces. Yeah. So what so strength in this context is, it's not just about impervious to damage, as it were. It's the flexibility not to sustain damage. Right. So
I think you describe it nicely from a actual, shall we say, ability to perform perspective, right? You want to be able to perform under all these circumstances, and under even your mistakes. You want to be able to dodge your mistakes, bend and move and be flexible under your mistakes. But the other aspect of performance too is, the more fluid you are, the more enjoyable the experience the audience has.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So it's actually a better performance. You can't just be like, okay, well, I'm going to set up the room with the right temperature and there are all those parameters that you mentioned, right? Such that I give the performance this way every time. And I suspect, okay, it's probably hard to test. I suspect that the audience is not going to dig it as much as somebody that was able to play, even if they're still in that same room, but they're able to play in many different ways. I think that there's something that comes across, okay? Now, if you take it out from just a purely musical performance and you get into like a speech or a talk or something where you're trying to persuade somebody, then it even becomes more evident that someone who was reciting a speech to you, right, versus someone whom, now, I think, for example, Bill Clinton versus Barack Obama. I think Bill Clinton was better at this thing than Barack. I don't know what you think. This is a good question for you. People compare these two guys together a lot in terms of their ability to move crowds and do that kind of thing.
Well, the first black president versus the second black president?
The first black president versus the second black president. I think the first black president was actually more convincing with his BS, right? That he seemed to be able to flow better in it than Barack Obama. It's not a commentary on how prepared they were. I think it was something. It's about their personalities. I think Bill Clinton is an actual extrovert, right? I think Barack Obama, like, you can smell introvert in that guy, like from like miles away. You can smell he really doesn't want to be talking to you, right? But what do you think about that, though? Just your thoughts on Barack versus Bill Clinton in terms of him exuding that kind of flowy and, hey, I'll go along with you type thing. Whom was the better snake oil salesman?
I think it depends on the definition of is. What is. Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting thing. I do get the sense that yeah, I didn't agree with a lot of either one of them politically. I wouldn't necessarily. There would be several things I would disagree with policy and a number of things, but I got the sense that Barack was actually like he's like a good person. Very talented, articulate, has all those kind of qualities, very intelligent, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas Bill, I don't want to say he's a bad person.
It's just more fluid with his values and morals. And
yeah, but I think he was more flexible with his value system. That's a good way to put that. Right. And so I think because of the nature of national politics, all of the sort of, just the fact that being involved in national politics, it's very much a, national politics is very much a magnet for narcissists. They can't resist it, right? It's like you have to be a narcissist at a certain level of magnitude to be willing to do what's necessary to get voted in those, I think local politics and maybe local politics, state politics, maybe lesser so, but definitely it's sort of a magnet for those. Yeah, I mean, it's so I would argue that probably both of them had probably a higher degree of narcissism than most. But
interesting. When you say national politics attracts narcissists, I'm like, does YouTube not attract narcissists, Dr. Thunder?
Of course. Everything, in any visible kind of thing that you do, and you're getting certain kind of feedback or certain kind of validation, being a performer, being on stage and doing it, and people are doing this when you're
checking all the boxes, Dr. Thunder. Go ahead.
That's right. So I don't know that you have to be a narcissist to do those things. I just think that disproportionately, and I think people would be wise to look at themselves and say, am I being a narcissist now? Am I doing X, Y, and Z? Yep.
Yeah, 100%. It's the whole also psychopaths or CEOs and this, that, and the other. Maybe a topic for a different day, but I think a lot of these psychological categories are not just to say nuanced for nuance sake. They are nuanced, obviously, but that there is a way of teasing out both internally for yourself. You looking and saying, how much of a psychopath am I? How much of a narcissist am I? right? And then also for other people that are looking in general to understand that when somebody says that, you know, psychopaths end up being CEOs, what does that mean? Or narcissists, or that kind of a thing. But I think perhaps more importantly for the individual to look at themselves to say, hey, I do have these psychopathic tendencies. So what does that mean? Right? I do say, like, you know, hey, I'm checking all these boxes of performer, and I'm on YouTube, and I'm doing this, that, and the other. What does that mean vis-a-vis my narcissism? Okay. And maybe I need to embrace that side of myself. Now, all I'm just talking about here is
just go for the
what I mean.
gusto.
Yeah, the Jungians, shout out to Jordan Peterson, will call this shadow work. And I think it's important, right? Because if you're doing these things that people say is, you know, you need to at least acknowledge, like, I don't know where you're going to fall on it. You may say, no, I'm not a narcissist. Or you may say, yeah, but you at least have to confront it, right? You have to be like, okay,
right.
What makes me different from all the other attention-seeking type people? Because if you say, no, I don't seek attention, then it's obviously not true behavior.
Right.
It's like, so it's kind of honesty, and it's not very radical honesty. It's not radical for me because I'm just kind of used to it, but some people will call it radical honesty. It's 100% important to actually be, and I guess maybe this is what differentiates the dangerous type of narcissist from the type that is more like, yes, I know I'm seeking attention right now, right? I'm not fooling myself into this, right? Yes, I know that I'm seeking power right now. I'm not fooling myself into the fact that I want power. Those kinds of things versus people who hide that. So shadow work, again, is about you looking at these kinds of things. So these things about you that are there rather than hiding it from yourself and from others, so on and so forth. Anyways, let's continue.
I'm doing okay. And I doubt if many of you in here will feel motivated enough to go do what I'm talking about, because some part of you may not be feeling that it's that bad. Guys, you got a job, or you're doing fine. You got relationships, you got money, you're doing okay. I'm suggesting, though, for thousands of people who've implemented what I'm sharing with you here, it could be a whole lot better. How sustainable is your life and work style right now in terms of the long haul? How available are you to all kinds of creative things that are right around you right now, but you don't have the bandwidth to recognize them or take advantage of them? And it could be a whole lot better. What would better actually look or sound like? Well, I use a metaphor from nature. Nature seems to get a whole lot of stuff done, but it ain't stressed and it ain't worried. You know, there just seems to be a sort of a natural rhythm about how things happen here. So if you go back to our matrix to say,
Interesting.
If I had just the right amount of perspective and just enough structure, just the right amount, so that I've got the stability to focus on that and then to execute on it, now you're in the captain commander modality, which, by the way, is very cool, because that's the place that you're then going to be able to engage with life and your creativity in what it's designed for, which is using your creative, intuitive intelligence into new frontiers. You're going to much more be in your zone as a normal state as opposed to an exceptional state. And you're going to be a whole lot more capable of dealing with surprise and change as it's coming at you. And by the way, it's coming faster and faster. That's what's new about the world, is how frequently everything is. Being ready for that. Basically, I refer to it, I use a martial arts term, as mind like water. A body of water responds to physical forces around it totally appropriate. It doesn't overreact, doesn't underreact. You throw in a pebble, it does pebble. Back to calm and balance again. You throw in a boulder, what does it do? It does boulderness. It does it very dispassionately. It doesn't tense up before the rock hits it. It doesn't get all mad at the rock for having disturbed its calm life. Back to calm and balanced again. Now, out of these metaphors from nature, I've got a couple of lessons I've learned. Lesson number one is, hey, folks, flexibility trumps perfection. Way beyond. Life is not static, folks. There is no perfection here. If there is, it means I've now married myself and matched myself to the dynamics of life and its activity. The second lesson I've learned is I need the ability to be able to shift my focus rapidly, in, out, up, down, quickly. In very few minutes, I might deal with a family issue and then take out the garbage and then be dealing with a business negotiation, and not take one to the next, but be fully available for each thing, give it its appropriate due. Most people
That
are
sounds
taking
like
one meeting
something
to the
I may
next.
have said.
Is this one of your things? Is this one of your particular doctrines? The ability to kind of just shift one to the other, to the other, to the other?
Well, it's I think the way so it's the same skill. He articulated it differently. So the way I address this or think about it, it's the whole kind of being fully present thing, and the way, and it's something that you have to actively work on. It's something that, you know, I continue to work on, and admittedly, sometimes I'm better at it than other times. You know, God ain't done with me yet. He ain't finished with me yet. So, so, you know, in my schedule, what I try to do is I try to create space to be able to do the necessary things, the necessary important tasks. So what that can facilitate is the ability to be more fully present, because I recognize that all of the things that might nag me have their place in on my calendar. So to the degree that you trust your calendar, and by the way, writing stuff down, having a calendar is not the that's not the, you know, that's not the active ingredient, as it were. It's actually doing what you say that is the active ingredient, because you can write stuff down. If you don't do what you say, then writing it down didn't do anything, right? The active ingredient is actually doing what you say, right? So you strategize, you plot, you figure out how much time you need to do things. Then when you're actually engaged in the things that you've said that you're going to do, trusting that you have allotted enough time for all the necessary stuff that you have to do, then you're sort of facilitating the ability to be more fully present. Now it's still a discipline. So you may opt out and still decide to carry all the baggage into every meeting, into every engagement, into every event that you have scheduled. You can choose to do that. Well, I don't want to say choose. Maybe you haven't developed the discipline yet to be able to resist, that. But I mean, at some point you just have to say, no, I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm focusing on this thing here, and I'm just going to make myself focus on the thing that I said that I'm going to be doing right now. I'm not going to let myself get distracted and off in the weeds on this thing. I'm doing this one thing that I said I'm going to do. Look, it says right in my calendar that I am supposed to be practicing, or I'm supposed to be, working on this particular project, or working at this one little wrinkle, That's what it says I'm supposed to be doing. So guess what? That's what I'm going to do right now. And then when I get done with that period of time, then I can go and I can think about something else. It both makes the time, each scheduled event, more meaningful, more impactful. It makes the scheduled event, you can pursue it with more intensity using all available bandwidth. It does that, but then it also allows you to rest, to take a break from those other things that would have been the baggage, right? So you're getting a few benefits. So that's what he's saying. I'm saying it differently than he's saying it. But when he says being able to have flexibility to go from this to that, what he's saying is he's dropping the thing that he just got done catering to. He's dropping that and fully dropping it, not even thinking about it, as he goes and engages in this other activity, and maybe totally different kind of activity.
100%. Yes, because it's not in his head. It's in the calendar. Very good. Tying it all together.
Most people take it home to work and work to home. That's not mind like water. Here's what you're really after. You want the ability to be able to put your focus exactly where you need it, in the way you need it, and not use your mind to be trying to accumulate stuff and avoid it. Big key. Folks, if you don't give appropriate attention to what has your attention, it'll start to take more of your attention than it deserves. So the weird, strange thing here is you actually have to use your mind to get stuff off your mind. So you have to apply a process to be able to get this stuff out of there. It won't happen by itself. How do you do that? Key number one, get it out of your head. Simple, but boy, is that a big habit for most adults to change. Anything and everything that's potentially meaningful, write it down. So I'll challenge all of you. Take the next 24 hours. Keep a pad and pen with you if you don't have it already, and don't have a thought twice. Little, big, personal, professional, just get it all out. You don't have to do anything with it. Just capture anything that's pulling on your psyche, that's going on that is not on cruise control. And I guarantee you, if you do that process, the thousands of people that we've had do that process absolutely would guarantee that once they've done it, they have a whole lot better sense of control and perspective and more appropriately engaged with what they're doing and what they should be doing. Now, that's just stage one. Stage two, which is necessary, because once you do stage one, you'll still see a bunch of stuff on that list that still need more thinking. Most to-do lists are incomplete lists, they're still unclear things, by the way. What you see on to-do lists are things like budget, mom, dog, babysitter.
All right. Okay, let's continue.
Right. Well, I understand those sort of
such a. You're gonna make a grade school joke about the mom thing on your list, but anyways.
To-do lists are things like budget, mom, dog, babysitter. You go, right. Well, I understand those sort of probably indicate something that something you've got to do something about, but what exactly is the work you need to do? And that's going to be the second thing you need to do, is to take those things that you've identified that are yanking your chain, and you need to make some really specific decisions about what does the work involve. And there's two key questions you need to ask about everything on your list. What outcome am I committed to finish, so that you can define that target out there? What's the project about the budget, about the dog, about the babysitter, and identify those. And then you need to ask yourself, what's the very next action step that I need to take to move forward on that if I were going to move on it? Outcome and action, zeros and ones, productive behavior. What are we trying to accomplish? How do we allocate resources to make it happen? But you need to apply that very specifically if you want to be appropriately engaged with anything yanking your chain out there. The late, great Peter Drucker, you folks should know that, would tell every one of us as knowledge workers, the toughest admonition, your toughest work is defining what your work is. He put it in broad terms. This is very specifically what he's talking about. What is the work embedded in that? And getting very...
Yeah, I see, Dr. Thunder, took me a while to kind of realize that this is I think I'm still in the process of realizing that this is legitimate work, right? What is legitimate work? What am I talking about? I'm talking about the work of taking what it is you need to do, right? And breaking it down into steps, not in your head, right? Not just like, okay, I got to do this budget, so I just start doing it, but taking it and be like, okay, step one, step two. I used to think, isn't it just procrastination? Am I not just wasting time right now trying to, map out the things I need to do, right? Isn't it, but the more and more, let me just say more and more recently, I'm starting to see that this is actual useful, important work, right? It is an important part of the work. So now I take my pad with me, my little, and it's not necessary for all tasks, right? Some things are fairly straightforward and simple. But then it's a thing that I typically call externalization, right? Which is like, okay, and I used to only use it. I used to think of it as, when I'm tired is only the time I need to do it. Because I just realized, okay, well, I always used to do this stuff, but I didn't realize that it was actually useful at all times, not just when, as opposed to just when you're tired, right? Because when you're tired, it's hard to do things in your head. So maybe you need to start counting with your fingers. Let's say it's one very easy example of externalization. But when I'm also tired, I need to start writing down the steps of things I need to do, because it's really tough to start doing things when you're really, really tired. But if you just see the step, you can kind of follow through. But more and more, I'm starting to realize that this is actually a good thing to do, rather than just have a big chunk of something in your calendar. That's a good start. But then when you get to it, maybe task number one is to, okay, for the first 10 minutes now of this 1 hour blocked out, let me granularize it a little bit more and kind of, is this something that you do? In other words, break down the task into more actionable items and then going for it? Or you just kind of go from your head, you know what you got to do, and you just start knocking it out?
Yeah, so because I'm an intuitive, my tendency is just to start doing stuff, and then stuff starts to fall in place, kind of a thing. But especially as the task becomes more challenging, more pieces to it, it becomes even more important to write things down, to make sure that everything is accounted for.
Mhm.
And one thing I think is interesting is often is the case, and I think we've said this. We've said this on this show before, probably. But one of the so okay, so do I really need to write this stuff down? Why can't I just do it?
Mhm.
Or, I mean, I can avoid that step, right? That step is
Mhm.
just taking time. Why don't I just get into just doing it, right? Okay, so that's a bit of the hurdle involved in this. But what I've found, and I'll just use transcribing music as an example, is a version of this. So, say for instance, I need to learn three new songs for church service. Okay, 3 new songs. All 3 songs are pretty challenging songs. Maybe there's some technical stuff, but most of it is there's just some. It's just there's a lot of different sections, and there's a lot of there's modulations. There's all kinds of stuff that's going on in the music that makes it not garden variety, not something that I can just listen to a couple times and have it. So I can right from the jump bite the bullet and say, you know what? I'm going to just transcribe this. Right? In other words, I'm writing out note for note,
Mhm.
at least for my own part. I'm writing out note for note the entire song. Now, the process that I use to do this is I'll acquire an MP3. Once I have an MP3, and that's easy to do, I won't describe it too explicitly right now, but you acquire an MP3, then I put the MP3 into one of my DAWs. I like Ableton Live. I'm using a bunch of jargon and saying stuff that people don't understand, but just understand that there is a process. So then after I've done that, I actually quantize the audio, because it is likely that the audio is that the recording was not recorded to a click track. Then once I've done that and I've generated a quantized audio file, I import it into my music notation software. Then I import the audio so I can see the wave, and it's actually synced exactly with the metronome click in the notation software. And then measure by measure, I can transcribe the whole song, and then I go back and I put in chord symbols and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so say it takes me 3 hours to do that. All right. Now, so here's the thing. But couldn't I just have done that by just listening to it over and over and just keep playing it and playing it and playing it? Okay. Yeah, I probably could have. But here's the value of doing this. One, when I go to rehearsal, everything is laid out exactly like the recording was. There's no question about it. And I don't have to, and I won't argue with people about it. I say, I know what it is because I transcribed the thing. Okay. I know exactly what you're wrong. I'm sorry. There's actually 2 more measures here, and this is how it is. See, I have it written down right here, and I know it's correct. Right. Okay. So there's that, keeping everybody on the same page, as it were. There's that. Also, it's likely that I'll end up doing the song again, not just one time. Right? Do it the 3, 4, 5 more times. Now, because I did the work and have it down, I get all of these other sort of residual benefits from this, including the fact that I don't have to remember it. I don't have to have it in my memory bank. I don't have to use my bandwidth. Zero bandwidth. Every time we play that song again, I don't have to spend any time learning it. right?
Yes.
All done. It's
Yes.
already done. See? So the transcribe something and it takes you 3 hours. Like, oh, do I really want to do this? And it's probably more like 2 hours. I don't know. And depending on what the tune is, it might be 1 hour, 1.5 hours. You can get pretty fast at this, pretty efficient at this. You do it a lot, right? So it's just so I don't even fight that battle anymore. I just know that okay, there's a new song. There's not a previously published version of the song. That's always a process I go through. Can I purchase, is there a downloadable version of the song so I can do that? That's accurate. Okay. That doesn't exist. Okay. That means I'm transcribing this one. I don't try to wrestle with it. Well, maybe I could just, why do I have to spend all this extra time doing this? I don't even do that. I just jump right to start writing it down. Audiate to auto transcribe faster. Yeah, there's not a reliable
auto
music
thing. The AI is not smart enough yet.
No, no. There's these websites that will claim that like you put the YouTube video in and then it can show you the chords or something as it's listening to it. And that stuff is very, it's not very granular. It's not granular at all. I mean, it gets wrong often, wrong most of the time, and catches no nuance. It's not giving you any, rhythms. It's not giving you any of the specifics. It's just very, very general. So anyhow.
100%. Yeah, the thing about creating a record, right, which is what you just described when you say I'm going to have to do this thing again. So now I have a nice, clean record of the song or something, is very important. And I tell this to people that work for me all the time, which is one of the things that we put out there as engineers is drawings, right? Whether whether it's whatever it may be, that's the output that people typically see from us is these drawings. And then there's another thing that's behind the drawings, which is a set of calculations, which someone else has to review. And usually some authority having jurisdiction, like let's say it's the state or the county or something, that says, some other engineer there says, okay, cool, this all checks out, generally speaking, great. Now, what a lot of engineers tend to do is they half-ass the quality of their calculations. The drawings, they don't want to half-ass because that's the client is going to get the drawings, right? The client gets the drawings, so let's make it nice at least, even though some still do some crappy stuff, which it's mind-boggling, the lack of aesthetics that some people have, especially engineers, right? You know how doctors have crappy handwriting? It's just, there's some people, anyways, and it's not good. So they may do okay with their drawings, but then in the calculations, just let me just kind of just do something over here, but I'm like, look, this is a record you're creating, right? And if you do this thing well, you'll never have to do it again. If you do it well, also, and this is the third point, which is the communication of facts, right? You create a record, so now you are in that rehearsal, and then you say, hey, this is it, okay? It's right here. You can communicate it. Okay, versus it's just in my head and oh yeah, I meant to write that. Yeah, I meant to carry the one, but I did it in my head and that's why I did all that kind of stuff, right? It's like, how are you going to communicate that? And I always use the examples of the way I train them. I'm like, look, I'm giving you documents that I created and scanned from 2007, calculations that I did from 2007, and you can clearly read it and you can learn from it. Okay, don't you appreciate that? Like, don't you appreciate the fact that I put this thing down in such a way where I'm stating the sources, I'm deriving the equations, I'm stating what my parameters are, and then I plug it in, and then you can take it and be like, But if I took your stuff can't last more than like, it's in other words, it completely, it's you just wasted your time writing that stuff, because what was the point of writing it if it's not gonna last? It can't last. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
there's
and using the transcription thing again. And Nick Penn was talking about like transcribing like what you're speaking, and that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about transcribing music. You know, so it's the, you know, different kind of thing. I'm a fan of auto transcribers for speaking, and I'm a fan of text readers. You know, I use that stuff all the time. That's very useful technology. I totally agree. With respect to transcribing music, and I assign my students to transcribe music frequently, and I always give them the counsel that if you're going to be spending time transcribing stuff, you might as well make it ready for publication. Make it look like, you know, the best transcriptions that you've seen. Rip off all of the formatting. Rip off all of the extra detail that you appreciated. Maybe stuff like what album the song was from, what time marking, that their solo starts at. Solo starts at 45 seconds. You know, double bars, rehearsal letters, annotation, chord symbols, proper phrasing and articulations, you know, tempo markings, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So then, since you already are having to spend the time, you go back to it 10 years later, it's like, oh man, this is great. You can share it with your student. You can, you know, yeah, it's just a positive thing. Or you can do the lazy way, which is let me just barely do it. And, you know, and it's not good for anything. It doesn't, you know.
Yeah, and it's almost like with the way I see it, and I don't tell them this, it's almost like a manifestation of a lack of belief in yourself. It's almost like you're saying you're not going to be around in 5 years. It's like, why would you, you know, you're in this career field or you're doing something and you're not doing things that you're not putting things down in a manner that it'll last. Like, is it, what is it? You just passing by or like what? Because you're heavily stifling yourself. You're not going to be able to compound on things.
Yeah. Something I have told my students before, and just something that I tell people in general is, if you're one of those people that is waiting for your life to begin, wake up. This is your life. Right? So everything that you do, right. Everything that you're doing is on the record, right? As it were. It all belongs to the story of your life. Every part of it. Right? So you're a student, you know, you're not doing all the stuff that you want to be doing yet. Okay. This is still part of your story. This is still, everything that you're doing is still valid, valuable. I mean, it still is. This is your life. There is no magical moment. I know they like to cite these in movies and Disney and stuff like that. I know, but there is no magical moment that you have crossed this line and now your life, now everything from now on is meaningful, is real. And everything, all that other stuff that happened, that stuff was nothing. But this is the real stuff now.
Man, I can't tell you how important
that's not what it is.
Yeah, this is super. I don't know how to. Okay. I'm assuming, Dr. Thunder, that no one had to. You kind of take this for granted. In other words, no one really had to kind of teach you that, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what I find in my stuff too, because I look around. Let's say, you know, people like. I think on Sunday we were talking about C student and A student stuff, and I describe myself more in the C student category. not actual C's, but not, you get what I'm saying. I'm not the guy that just was super focused on getting that, making sure it was 4.0 all the time, right? And I would see this 4.0 people, and I would always think that they had things more on lock, like they knew certain things about specifically this point about your life being important right now. Okay. And I said last week that I was talking to, it was a 4.0 guy that I was telling something about what he needs to do. And then he told me that he was going to start doing it after he got married. Right. It was, I know that thing, and this is way from back from college, but that stuck in my head because I was like, this is a smart guy. This is a guy that I kind of think, oh, he's got all his ducks in a row. How could he be so dumb with regards to this thing? No, bro, you're never gonna do it. If you're saying you're waiting till you get married before, it's like, what does that? It was so confusing that I was like, this is not so. So obviously, I didn't beat the point, and the point is, I don't know how to teach that thing. Now, it's something that you just gotta hammer in. It's one of those things where I imagine myself being, let's say, in your class, and then you say it, and you like, this is your life, and all of a sudden they wake up, something wakes up in them, right? Otherwise, it's really tough to get people to see the importance of that. Why I just take it for granted.
Now I'll tell you, there I had a student that, and this is like one of those moments that you know it. I mean, it's a meaningful moment, where a student comes back to you like years later, and tells you that something that you said to them in particular was a turning point for them. You know, and it's one of those things that when you reflect back on, you know, things, and you know, all the stuff that you've done, the stuff that you've, you know, your struggles, your triumphs, all that kind of stuff, all of the bumps in the road along your journey to get to doing certain things that you want to do, and then you're imparting sort of wisdom to folks that will be willing to receive it, you know. And it's always that you can't make anybody learn anything. You can only provide an opportunity, right? And when a student comes back to you and says, you know, you told me, I remember really clearly when you told me that if I was waiting for my life to begin, wake up, this is your life, that really that caused me to start thinking differently about things. Yeah, I mean, and it does happen. It happens every once in a while. Don't sit around waiting for people to tell you, because even if it is happening, most people will never tell you that it happened. Mm-hmm. So that can't be a source of motivation for doing it. But it is a good thing, and you know, a meaningful moment, as it were, a moment pregnant of meaning. You know.
Shout out. We've ended the poll, and it seems like we have a nice, clean kind of bell curve type thing where the middle, okay, 62% say that there's somewhat organized, and then we have outliers on the left side and on the right side. 18%, you know, some people are not organized at all, 18%, and then another 18% being very organized, right? Now let's land the plane here on this psychological note. It might be the case you're gonna need to do a part 4 on this. Who knew when we started this? We thought it was gonna, this guy, you know, like
we was kind of trolling the cat, like kind of.
Yeah, we were trolling the cat. I'm glad that, you know, he did that whole thing where he was talking about his, you know, Zen moment. We knew he was kind of marketing a little bit, but now he's bringing out again the facts of his book, right? The books which we reviewed before, which is about capturing the information, which is that taking it out of your head, putting it into a calendar, and then organizing it, which is what he was talking about now, where you break it down and what is the next action step, rather than just say, for example, for me in this thing here, it does, maybe you can't see it or not, but it says FBDS training. That's what's on the top. That's what will be in the calendar, right? And I just clicked it off now, but in the calendar, it says FBDS training. But then when I got there to that part of what I'm going to do, I stopped and I started listing what is going to be part of this FBDS training thing, right? Now I already knew all these things that I wrote down below, right? I could have just started doing it, but I actually granularized it to the point where I'm writing down, get the dimension for the beams, get the dimension for the column, and I leave a little space here for what I'm going to write down, dimension of the beam, dimension of the column, the this, the that. It's like, of course I know that I'm going to need those dimensions, okay? But I wrote it down. I broke it all down so that now I just turn my head and like, okay, dimension of being, dimension of column. I don't. My mind could even be maybe slightly off. You know, I don't have to be at 100%. You know, in order to just crank that one out. And when it's done, it's done. Move it away. So the principle applies in the big and the small. The principle of when you take it out of your head and put it somewhere else, you're able to you're less stressed. Applies in the big calendar and also in the small granular task. It's out of my head and I just write down get dimension of beam. I go get it. I plug it in there. It's a lot easier. Now the psychological note here. What do you have to say about what Kaiser and Empire says here? Now productivity is hard enough as it is. Okay, and then there's the whole bad mental space thing, which is inevitable. Either you're chemically imbalanced or you're just living life. Hence, you're gonna have highs and you're gonna have lows. You know, you're gonna have, or you know, it could be a part of your diet. It could be all kinds of things. Okay, even if you're completely, you're drinking your water, you're going to the gym, you got a good diet and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna have highs and lows. Now, and you can comment on this, riff on this for us to end. But to start off, the first thing that I think is important with regards to productivity and your mind, okay, is to understand what I just said, is to understand that there are going to be highs and lows. Now, why? Because then you're not so surprised by it. You're not adding an additional fact of beating up yourself about the fact that you're at a low point. Because that's a lot of what happens. A lot of what people describe as low is them beating themselves up because they're at a quote unquote low. They're at an energetic low. They're at some kind of a chemical low. Many, many reasons why you could be there, right? But then what they do is they start going, oh my God, I suck. Woe is me. This is blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But if you just knew that, hey, okay, this is Wednesday, right? Maybe it always comes on Wednesdays. And you're like, here we go. Here's another Wednesday. Or for me, Sundays are very busy. If we're just talking about strictly busy type stuff now, and you're going to be a little extra stressed, I'm like, here's a Sunday coming. Or you're in a particular kind of low, and I'm always checking myself, right? Where, okay, my breathing is shallow today, and I'm a little on the edge, and I can kind of tell by how irritable I am. Irritability just by, let's say, if I wake up in the morning and I watch a YouTube video, and my reaction is to just like roll my eyes, right, at some stupid stuff somebody said, I'm like, oh, okay, it's one of those days. Like you're in that mode today, Ike, and you just know that. I know that today is going to be a little bit more challenging. You're going to be a little bit more reactive and or reactionary. You get more irritable, whatever it may be. The recognition of this and that it is natural. And it's not, I'm not doing the I'm okay, you okay, it's okay to be, it's okay not to be okay type crap. I'm just saying that knowing that these laws are there helps in the sense that you're not going to beat yourself up in addition. Anyways, any thoughts on these types of things?
Yeah, I think that last point was an important one. I think a good reason for acknowledging when things are not going great or you don't feel that great, and is so that others recognize that it's normal to have ups and downs, and when you have ups and downs, to be able to still press through it that's the whole point. That's the struggle, that's the challenge, and everyone faces that. Anyone that is successful has faced that. Now, I'm not going to do the thing where people try to say, that being on top is just because they were willing to do all the hard things when other people weren't willing to do the hard things. I don't think that's true. There's a lot of folks that are on top that are, lazy SOBs that are just lucky, because it's not fair. Okay. But that doesn't matter. That's a side issue. The issue is, what can you do? So it's all about looking at what it is that you're in control of and doing your best to master those things, the stuff that is within your reach. You master that stuff, you get really good at that stuff. And one of those, and we can say one of those ideas is this idea of acknowledging, okay, stuff doesn't always go well, but at least what I can do is I can press through that. I can, I think I said this before. I think one of the dangers of trying to sort of convince people that, everything's supposed to be like floating on a cloud and, butterflies in your stomach and, hypertitillation at every moment, levitating and floating around because of the degree of deep passionate experience, that I think a problem with that is that nobody is like that. The only people that are potentially could be like that are people that are manic depressive. So in a state of mania, they may be able to experience that kind of euphoric stuff for extended periods of time, but what the payment for that is extended periods of depression. Okay. It is, so if you could, so I think the danger of making it seem as though if you're having any questions about what it is that you're doing, or with your life, or if you have any turbulent moments, or maybe God's trying to tell you something there, maybe I think often the case is that when you start doing that, I just think it's really damaging to people, because the nature of reality is that we can't know everything, and we have to, you have to take things on faith, right? There's so much about reality that you can't know, you can't have direct knowledge of. And so you have to go in some sort of direction, and constantly sort of cutting your legs out under yourself, because you're not in this perpetual euphoric state each moment. And every time you have a challenge, even though it's something that you really enjoy doing, you quit because you've been convinced that any sort of anything less than this euphoric state at all times is problematic, and it affects our relationships with and everything else. It's just not healthy, and it's not mature. See, part of pushing a person towards maturity would include discontinuing trying to make them laugh and giggle all the time. Right? So you do that with kids, you do that with babies. My son comes to me and, oh, I'm not feeling good because something didn't happen at school or whatever, I can just start wrestling him, right? And, slap him around a little bit, right? And, pillow fight and he loves that. That's, he just has a really, right. But see, the thing is that I can't do that all the time. At some point, he's going to have to mature, and hey, sometimes stuff doesn't go great, and are you going to be able to deal with it? Right. And maybe right now is not the time to teach him all of those lessons. I talk to him about that stuff, but I also, am trying to make him smile and laugh about stuff. Right. But people don't do that. You're not going to, your whole life, people are not going to be trying to make you laugh and giggle and stuff. And so you need to give up on that idea. And you need to find a deeper reason for doing things, a deep enough reason so that if you're not full of euphoria each moment, that you love what it is that you do enough to be able to deal with not feeling on cloud nine all the time. That's more of an indication of something that you should be doing, is that you love it, even though it's good. It comes with problems.
So yeah, if then that these problems are dissuading you from this thing, maybe it's not the right thing. Assuming you're all other things being equal, assuming you're psychologically sound and healthy and all that kind of stuff, maybe if this thing is just, if you just can't stand doing it, right, in rough times, then maybe it's not the path for you. But something else you also mentioned about the control, the things that you are in control of, 100% resonates in this case. It may be the case that there's certain things that you need to hone in your life. Let's say maybe it's the ability to cut people off, or the ability to say no, or some kind of thing that you got to control in your life. Some psychological, or let's just say some stressors, because this thing, when you're saying that, so the comment, if it's still highlighted, is about being in a bad mental space. It's not highlighted, it's still. This bad mental space definitely could be from external factors. It's not just you, just having a bad day. Maybe some actual crap is going on. And this actual crap is going on is going to force you to do certain things that that you should have done. Okay. You didn't want to cut certain people off. Okay. Now you're in a situation where now you're forced to cut them off. Right. Yeah. So you didn't want to cut them off, and now you're in a bad situation because you've been hanging out with the wrong crowd, let's say. Now you're in a sticky situation. Now you're gonna have to learn how to cut people off, and that lesson will stick with you, right? You're like, hell, like now I'm gonna learn to say no. We'll learn to cut people off. Just using the cut people off thing as an example here. But once you mentioned that what is within your control thing, it brought that to mind. That hey, sometimes these bad situations are forcing you to grab a hold of that one thing which you have a control of. A lot of times it's the thing which we didn't want to touch. We didn't want to do that thing. We wanted to ignore that part, right? Now you got to do it. And once you do things like that under such situations, the lesson does stick. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been listening to a lot of, I'm on this whole YouTube, my current YouTube binging activity involves watching prison content. Okay. Now these are ex-cons, right? That have YouTube channels that talk about the whole prison life, because you can imagine why it might be entertaining and interesting, especially the ones that actually are more articulate and they have because there's a lot to learn about when a whole bunch of stuff is taken away from you. What do you have control of still, right? And what could keep you going still, and the different ways there's a lot of commonalities that come up with what we're saying now and what they say, right? To do your time rather than have the time do you, as they say, right? So ladies and gentlemen, I think we might have a part 4, concluding part, because I think there's another about 10 or 15 minutes of the video left, where he's gonna land the plane vis-a-vis these topics. Now, what you got, Dr. Third? I think what kind of special Thursday night action you got on Thunder's Thoughts coming up?
Yeah. So I'm going to be doing a show, the Thunder's Thoughts. I have a topic that I'm sort of circling around, but it's going to be related to somehow related to this recent mass shooting that occurred in a supermarket. And yeah, so it's going to be a heavy show. And recently I interviewed Rollo Tomasi. This is from this past Saturday, and that video is performing very well, as you might suspect. It was a great conversation, and we got into some interesting. We got into some stuff that you probably haven't heard Rollo talk about. We talk about music. He asked me about the Whiplash movie, and so we talked about that. We talked about we geeked out a bit about guitars, and he confessed that he shouldn't going to Guitar Center is probably not the best thing for him to do, because he'll probably leave with a bunch of gear. And I have that same thing in common with him. So that was interesting. But then we also talked about some usual topics that you may expect, about the dating market and about marriage, and some of his views about organized religion. He says he's a Christ follower. He's I asked him about Kevin Samuels. We talked about that, and I had 3 questions which were curated. I curated from Green Gorilla, Mumia Obsidian Ali, and BGS Ibmore, and he gave some pretty fascinating answers to those questions. So yeah, it was a great interview. Please go and check that out. Tomorrow night I'll be interviewing again on my Conversations with Dr. Thunder, Pastor Joel Brooks Jr. And he was an interview that I did. I think that was in the quarantine interviews, which of course is the first 50 episodes. This Rollo Tomasi interview was episode 200. Episode 200. So that was a nice moment there. Episode 100 was Donovan Sharp. That was my first Donovan Sharp interview. So Rollo got episode 200. So go and check that stuff out, and come back 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday for Thunder's Thoughts. I'll get that thumbnail out pretty soon here. And then of course we've got on Sunday, Case Closed. Ike and I will be chopping it up, figuring out what it is that we're going to what the topic's going to be. There are a number of trending topics right now, so that show very interesting. And Bernard Riley is going to be a regular panelist now, so that's very cool. Shout out to Bernard. But 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. That's Case Closed. It'll be on my channel. And also, if you wouldn't mind, you could go and subscribe to my second channel, Dr. Thunder Convo. Dr. Thunder Convo. So go and subscribe to that. There are 10 episodes of conversation the first 10 episodes of quarantine interviews up there now, and you can get in there. But I'm actually strategizing a method by which to be able to stream 24/7. I'm going to per week, I'm going to stream the same 20 episodes of Conversations with Dr. Thunder. So that's the idea. All right. Well, of course, we'll be back on Tuesday. Getting ish done.
Indeed. I just dropped the link for Dr. Thunder Convo. I just subscribed to that as well. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back for the final part next week. Okay. And I'll be there'll be content here, watch your notifications for tomorrow and Thursday and on and on and on. But next week we'll be back to conclude this topic on stress-free productivity, getting stuff out of your head, putting it into an organized system so that you are less stressed. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. And with that, we are gone. Peace.
All right.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.